I got out of the shower as I was cleaning off the mirror, and I saw fingers pushing through my window.
He looked very demonic, and he said in like a really scruffy voice, he said, "Hey."
I headed up that way, and my dog barked, and I looked over, and he was probably 20 feet away from me, walking straight towards me.
He used her phone after he had killed her to add me on Facebook.
I'm Jamie Beebe.
And I'm Jake Deptula. We're the hosts of Strictly Stalking, bringing you heroic stories of those who have survived at the hands of a stalker.
To hear these stories and more, listen to Strictly Stalking wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 360 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. I'm having an excellent week. Feeling really good when I get out of bed.
Yeah?
Which is not always the case for me. So
it should be something to strive for.
It is. The body is feeling good right now.
That's good.
Hey, let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Jason Tent jump out at our highest level.
Hey, thank you, Tent.
Kara.
What's going on, Kara?
Kristen Chukwuma.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Ann Miller.
Hey, Ann.
Michelle Buckley.
What's going on, Buckley?
Marcy Nelson jumped out at our highest level.
Like a full Nelson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Joe Murphy.
Hey, Joe.
Michael Voigt.
What's going on, Voigt?
Mandy Joe jumped out at our highest level.
Thank you, Mandy.
Finn Katz jumped out at our highest level.
Man, loving all this. Thanks, Finn.
Tina Page.
Not Turnip Page, but Tina Page. Get it? No?
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
Just because I don't laugh doesn't mean I don't get it. Sometimes it just means it's not that funny. We had Adrian Judge.
Hey, Adria.
Ruthus Carver.
Hey, thank you, Carver.
And last but not least, Morgan Phillips.
Well, Morgan, we appreciate that.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Brian Schrum.
Brian in the house.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support, the new and continued. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out on Aaron Key, who's been called the East Harlem Rapist. This is a very, very bad individual.
Yeah.
Murdered a number of girls and women, raped a number of girls and women. Just a nasty, nasty guy.
Glad he's where he's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at his name, anytime you say the name Aaron, I can't help but go back to that one video of those comedy guys where they do the Aaron.
Oh, and his name is spelled differently. It's Arohn.
Right.
But that's Key and Peele. And that was one of the funniest skits. I still sometimes will just pull it up on YouTube and watch it.
Cracks me up.
Because it is so funny. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the disappearance of Mary Badaracco. Mary Badaracco has been missing since August 1984. Initially, investigators believe she was fleeing her marriage to businessman Dominic Badaracco, but as time passed, they became suspicious that there was more to Dominic's story. Mary's case was later reclassified as a suspected homicide. Almost 40 years later, though, Mary's body still has not been found.
And that is a long time.
It is a long time. And for me, I look at it from a couple of different angles. It's a long time because it hurts the investigation. Finding the body could lead to some evidence or at least clues about how she was murdered. But it's also a very long time for her family to not have answers and to not have her, if she is dead, as is suspected,
sure,
to bury.
Yeah. Sense of closure.
Mary Edna Badaracco was born on March 11th in 1946. She was 38 years old when she went missing. The Hartford Courant described Mary as a hometown girl who loved her daughters, was passionate about painting, and was well liked by her coworkers. And as we go through these unsolved, we talk about it a lot, right? People say glowing things about victims or people who have disappeared. Does it ever make you wonder what people are going to write or what people are going to say about you one day when you're no longer here?
Good riddance.
I doubt anyone will ever say that, but...
And it was said that many people said good riddance to him.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. But now I do think there's a difference here because we're talking about someone who's disappeared, presumed dead,
right,
presumed murdered. And so there's that element to it. But it does make me wonder sometimes, am I doing enough at the end of the day to have people come out and say really nice things about me?
Do I have a desk yet?
No, because you said you didn't want one.
That's what you say I said that you said.
Mary was married to Dominic Badaracco for 14 years. Dominic was born in Danbury, Connecticut. He had a difficult childhood. His mother died of cancer when he was 3 years old, and a year later, his 12-year-old brother also died of cancer.
Wow.
That's rough to lose a mother and your brother within about a year's span of time. Dominic worked as a landscaper and laborer before he got a job as a truck driver for Danbury's Public Works Department in the early 60s. He married a woman named Charlotte, and they had 4 children together. They divorced in 1968. After the divorce, Dominic shifted careers and became VP of a contracting company called Tri-State Home Improvement. The company did roofing, siding, and painting. Dominic had a reputation for being a hard-nosed contractor, good at getting his way, according to the Danbury News-Times. You did a little contract work in your day, didn't you?
Contract work in contracting.
Yeah, I said that to trip you up.
Yeah.
But you caught it.
Yeah.
But then admitted to it anyway.
Well,
But you were a contractor, right, for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you, at a certain level, have to be a little hard-nosed? I don't know if that's the right term.
No, I think you have to be.
You have to be assertive. You have to be on top of things.
Yeah. You got to be able to, be a certain way with your suppliers and vendors and other subcontractors and even your clients.
One former employee whose name was kept anonymous for fear of retribution told the News-Times he would be the nicest guy in the world if things were going his way, but he could turn in a second. He had 5 or 6 crews he would subcontract to, the advantage being that many small contractors couldn't afford to pay workers compensation insurance. But you worked for him and him only. If you took another job, you were done. You were out of the clique. And he was cheap. When the job was done, he'd always cut a couple $100s off your bill and say you were overcharging him.
Well, I knew guys that definitely would expect you to only work for them. And if they found out you were doing subcontracting for another guy, they would, not give you work anymore. So I had subs that would come to me like, hey, can you help me out? Because he cut me loose because I did that one job for you.
So that's not out of the ordinary.
No.
At least from your experience. Now, I can't imagine it's normal to agree to pay somebody something and then when the job is done, knock money off of it and say you're overcharging me.
Yeah, you'd be surprised in that contracting field.
Really?
How things can work out sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. You do. So Dominic also invested in several bars, one of which was called Fat Badaracco. This is where he met his future wife, Mary. So if I was going to start a bar, I'd have to think about the name of it, right? I think name is important. Fat Ferguson, I don't believe, is the first thing that I would go with.
I don't know. I could see that being a big hit, like in an Irish, Scottish neighborhood.
Fat Ferguson?
Yeah. Where are we going to go? Let's go down to Fat Ferguson's.
Maybe. Mary and Dominic got married in 1970. Her daughters, Sherry Passero and Beth Profeta, moved in with Dominic and his 4 kids, and they had a blended family. And I think that is pretty normal. You see that happen quite a bit, especially when people are on their second marriages. They had children from their first marriages. Get a little bit of a Brady Bunch situation. Mary and Dominic, though, did not have a happy marriage. He was physically abusive towards Mary, and the kids lived in what was described as a very tense home environment.
No way to be growing up.
No, it really isn't. And I just wonder, being hard-nosed in business, was this guy able to turn that off when he came home? Or was that just the way he was? Because the one guy said he could be the nicest guy in the world, but he could flip.
I think, some people get used to being the head honcho, the king in their business world. Mm-hmm. And when they go home, they expect the same thing,
My way or the highway.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying it's right, but I get it. In June 1973, Mary was admitted to the Danbury Hospital and was treated for blurry vision and bruises on both cheeks. She claimed she fell, but hospital staff included a note in her records that said battering incident.
I think back in the day, around that time period, I think a lot of times people would turn their back to that kind of type of situation.
You mean like turn a blind eye?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't sound like they did so here. I mean, they noted this battering incident in her records. Now, I don't know that they did anything about it. And I think maybe today it would be handled differently, possibly.
Yeah, I almost kind of think in some areas that if you show up at the hospital like that, I think they have to call somebody.
Yeah, they might have an ethical duty today where they didn't back then. But unfortunately, we've heard throughout the years where women have felt as though they needed to claim they ran into a door, they fell, some type of way to explain the bruises. And that's horrible. You feel so bad for those women. But as we've talked about, sometimes they felt trapped.
Yeah.
Or they felt as though the legal system wasn't going to do anything. So to bring it up, they were just inviting more retribution, but nothing was going to change.
Yeah. Or they had it in their head because of the other abuse that they didn't deserve any better. What they had is what is the best that they deserve. So
you mean like the psychological abuse? Yeah, I think that's a good point. Good point. In 2013, Mary's daughter, Sherry Passero, told the News Times, when she knew a beating was coming, she would shuffle us off to other people's houses to protect us. But we would see the aftermath when we came home. The house would be trashed and she would be bruised. And I think it's heartbreaking for, children to understand what's going on. But I also see a mother who's trying to do everything she can to protect her children.
Yeah.
She doesn't want it to happen to them. And I'm sure she doesn't want them to see it happen to her.
So she's putting her kids in front of her, putting them first, getting them safe. Speaks a lot about her.
It does. It really does. One of Mary's friends told the Hartford Courant she would come to work with a black eye. 2 or 3 times she would come knocking on my door at 2:00 in the morning, and I would put them up, talking about the kids. Additionally, in 1987, Mary's brother, Joseph Denho, said to a state trooper over the years that Dom and Mary went together. And when they were married, they had numerous fights. And many a time, Dom knocked out Mary's false teeth. But they always stayed together and worked things out. Something tells me, and I don't want to speak badly about Joseph, but something tells me that if you had a sister and you knew that was going on, it might not have gone down the same way.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been okay with it. I know sometimes they say, mind your own business.
It's their marriage. Let them work it out.
She's not wanting to do anything about it. Don't you go in there. But, if it's my sister, it's my sister. I don't have a sister, but if I did,
yeah,
I'd have a problem.
I don't either. It's kind of like The Godfather. They said that in that movie.
Yeah.
It's their marriage. You got to let them work it out. Don't get involved. But Sonny couldn't do it.
No, he had to go over there.
And it ultimately led to his death. But
now you just ruined The Godfather for some people.
yeah, if you haven't seen it in the last 50 years, I'm okay ruining it at this point.
And that's just one part of it.
It's just one part of it. Funny story, I was on the Xbox the other night and I was playing basketball and one of the kids that was playing with us, I think he was like 23 years old. And we were talking about favorite movies and I said The Godfather and he said, The Godfather? That's over 3 hours long. I would never watch that. But I probably felt the same way when I was younger.
Probably did.
Sherry and Beth said they grew up in fear of Dominic and moved out as soon as they could. Sherry said in an interview with the News Times, he was always in charge and very dominating. If he said not to do something, we didn't do it. My mom was always trying to protect us. So I think you said it, Gibbs. This doesn't sound like a very good, warm, inviting home environment.
No, very controlling.
But all on the part of Dominic.
Yeah.
It sounds like Sherry was a good mother.
Yeah.
Dominic continued business operations in the Danbury area. In the early 80s, he partnered with his acquaintance Ronald Richter to form Richter and Badaracco Siding Company. In early 1984, Mary and Dominic moved from Danbury to the nearby town of Sherman, where they were renovating a home. They lived there for about 6 months before Mary disappeared. She cleaned houses part-time for a realtor and spent the remainder of her time painting or crafting. Her daughters were young adults and no longer living with her by this point, but they did visit her regularly. And this is something that my wife and I are kind of going through now. The kids are off at college. The youngest one will come home for the summer, at least. My oldest one won't. She has an apartment. So, we're navigating this kind of new life. And it has its good points and its bad points. Obviously, we miss them like crazy, but we're also getting along very well without the kids, if that makes sense.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you find yourself, like my kids are gone. They never come back. So I'm in that house all by myself. So every now and then I turn on a little music and do that little dance from that movie that you just watched.
Silence of the Lambs?
He dances around naked in the end.
Oh, you talking about Saltburn?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm never doing that dance ever. That movie still has me creeped out. Sherry saw her mother at dinner a week before she disappeared and noticed what she called an odd edginess, according to the Hartford Courant. You ever see someone, let's say a family member or somebody you just know so well, and you see them, you visit with them, and you just know something's not right.
Yeah.
And maybe you even ask them, but they won't tell you.
Maybe she just had enough at that point. Like shit's going to change.
Almost like she was planning a change in her life. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Mary was last seen at her home in Sherman, Connecticut on August 20th, 1984. Sherry Passero first learned her mother was missing a few days after she disappeared. Dominic's daughter called her and said Dominic wanted to talk to her about their upcoming weddings. Both of the daughters were engaged at that time. Sherry thought this was strange and wondered why Mary hadn't called her. The next day after work, Sherry drove to her mother's home and saw Mary's 1982 Chevy Cavalier. The driver's side windshield had been smashed. Mary was nowhere to be found. Dominic told her, "Your mother left me. She took some money and took off." And I could see why Sherry would think it was strange that her mother didn't call her, and instead it was Dominic's daughter. And then, obviously she's worried about her mother. She shows up, she finds her car windshield smashed up, and then it almost sounds casual, the quote.
Yes.
From Dominic, right? "Your mother left me. She took some money and ran off."
But why wouldn't she have called her daughter and told her what was going on at that point? It doesn't make any sense.
No, that has to be the first thought probably that went through her head. Also, if that really happened, why does Dominic want to talk about the upcoming weddings, but not about the fact that Mary has run off and left him?
Yeah, and how do I get her back, or what do we do now? But no, he wants to jump right into the wedding.
Yeah, it just seems so very nonchalant. He asked Sherry to come back soon to clean out Mary's things. When Sherry returned to the house, she saw that all of her mother's belongings were gone, except for a few perfume bottles and art supplies. Sherry told the Hartford Courant, "I went up to her room to pack. There was nothing there. I opened drawers. There was nothing. Not one odd sock, not one old shirt. Every picture of Mary and her daughters had also been removed from the home. It seemed like Dom was trying to get rid of any trace of Mary's presence in their home."
It's really strange.
It is very strange. I get it. People split. People have problems with their marriage. One person decides to leave, but is it really over? How do you know that Mary just doesn't need some time to cool off and she's going to come back? You pack up everything and get rid of it
that quickly?
That seems final.
It does.
That seems like she's not coming back. And to me, that's very suspicious. I don't know how it can be viewed any other way. Most disturbingly, Dominic told Sherry, "Don't tell anyone. Don't tell your sister. My lawyer will handle everything." How can she not tell her sister that her mother left and nobody knows where she is?
Well, he had that thing about him where he put fear into people.
And that's exactly what happened. Sherry was so afraid of him that she didn't tell her sister Beth. Beth didn't learn that Mary was missing until their stepsister, Dominic's daughter, reached out to her. And I think that magnifies just exactly the kind of hold that he had over the girls, or the fear that he instilled in them.
Right.
To the point where, they're grown and Sherry's still afraid to disobey him.
Yeah.
And tell her sister.
And this can't look good later, right? I mean, you think about it.
None of it.
Yeah, I mean, get rid of the stuff as quick as you can.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody.
Sherry and Beth eventually reported their mother missing to the Connecticut State Police. They knew Mary wouldn't run away because Beth had recently had a baby, Mary's first grandchild, and Sherry was engaged. Mary loved spending time with the baby and was looking forward to the wedding. And I think most children, and I say children, these are grown children, but most would say, well, mom just wouldn't run away, wouldn't, not call us. But then you throw in these other big events, first grandchild, upcoming wedding. What mom is walking out on all of that and her daughters?
Yeah, I mean, maybe their mom wanted to leave him, but still be in their lives, right? And just move away from him, not like disappear from all their lives.
Yeah, you could see her with the troubled marriage to Dom, wanting to get out of that situation, but there would be no reason not to communicate that with her children. Dominic told the police that he last saw Mary when he left for work on August 20th, 1984. When he came home, her car was still there, but Mary was gone, and she took her clothes, jewelry, and money with her. She left her car keys and wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Okay, if that were really true, that would be a woman who is leaving the relationship. Here's the one thing I don't understand. If you're leaving, why wouldn't you take your car?
Yeah.
Is someone picking you up? And would you not need your car wherever you're going?
And I still just don't buy the fact that she wasn't going to tell her kids.
No, that's a huge one that is almost impossible to get past. Dominic claimed that Mary took over $100,000 from their home and said they were planning on getting a divorce at the time of her disappearance. He admitted that he smashed her windshield because he was angry.
While she was in it?
That I don't believe he said.
And does he sound like the type of guy that you could walk out of that house with $100,000?
And he wouldn't come after you?
Yeah.
He doesn't. Also, who has $100,000 in cash sitting around at home?
I know I carry mine in my wallet that I never open up, you know?
Well, you've got
Monopoly money.
that kind of quasi fanny pack that goes like all the way around, the one you wear on like on planes and stuff, and it's just all stuffed with cash.
Yeah, mostly Monopoly money.
That's a lot of money, though.
100,000? Absolutely.
And we're talking 1984.
Yeah, it makes it even more so.
One early police report said it is assumed Mr. Badaracco did not report her missing due to his fear of questions concerning large amounts of cash he claimed was gone. And obviously, you're going to get questions about your wife's disappearance. But if you say she took $100,000, well, you might get some questions about this large amount of money.
Yeah, how'd you come about that type of money? Why didn't you put it in the bank?
Dominic filed for divorce on August 29th, 1984, according to court documents. Within 2 weeks of Mary's disappearance, Dominic's girlfriend Joan moved into the home. They were later married. And what story where this has come up has ever ended well?
Well, exactly. I mean, even if you were not guilty, this makes you look so guilty.
It does. 9 months later, Dominic went before a judge and said he and Mary were discussing the terms of their divorce. During the divorce proceedings, Dominic first testified that Mary stole the money from their home, but he later said she agreed to give up her rights to their home in exchange for $100,000. He claimed the separation was amicable.
See how I put a little spin on that? That was my settlement fee to her, so I get all the proceeds of this house.
The divorce was finalized in May 1985. Mary's daughter, Sherry Ann Beth, started working with Lynn Tabersack, a former state representative. Tabersack told the Hartford Courant that she didn't believe Mary ran away to start a new life. She also felt pressure not to investigate the case, saying, "There was a time a friend of the Badaraccos told me to mind my own business for my own sake." Okay, being told to mind your own business is one thing, but when you finish it with "for your own sake," that's a little more ominous.
It is.
Threatening, almost.
You need to back away from this, if you know what I mean, for your own sake.
In 1986, a former member of the Bridgeport Hells Angels, who was in witness protection, submitted a tip that Dominic's son, Joseph Badaracco, and an associate named Steve Kendall whacked Mary and another gang member on Dominic's orders. Mary was allegedly murdered because she threatened to go to the police with incriminating information about Dominic. Steve Kendall was incarcerated at the time. He refused to be interviewed, but later took a lie detector test and failed. The polygrapher determined that he lied when he said he never saw Mary and didn't know if a member of the Hells Angels killed her. So that's interesting. You know, for what it's worth, he did fail the polygraph.
Just adds more suspicion.
It does. Kendall died in a motorcycle accident in the 1990s. Joseph was allegedly a member of the Hells Angels, but he has denied this over the years. He has also denied having any involvement in Mary's disappearance and suspected death. So again, there's no way to tell, right, the validity of this tip, but it definitely paints Dominic as a little bit more than a contractor. It paints him as a man maybe involved in other things with the authority or the gravitas to order people to do hits, to, you know, do other things like that.
You know, when you're a certain type of contractor, sometimes it's easy to move money around.
Because you are dealing with large amounts of money?
Yes.
So are you getting to a place where the missing $100,000 is possibly money paid for a hit or something like that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the theory we're going to have to explore.
I mean, don't forget, he also owned a bar or two, so that's an all cash business, right? And that can
in the 80s, I would think more so.
Yeah.
Than today. In 1990, Mary's case was reclassified as a homicide. That year, Joseph Badaracco was convicted of arson because he hired 2 men to firebomb a bar owned by one of his father's rivals. He later moved to upstate New York, according to the Hartford Courant.
This kind of sounds like Peaky Blinder-ish.
Or Goodfellas.
Or Goodfellas.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Mary was declared legally dead in 1991. In 1993, an envelope containing interview reports was dropped off in Beth Profeta's mailbox while she was pursuing a Freedom of Information request. All of the names were blacked out, but the reports contained information about the Hells Angels tip. Dominic's son, Dominic Jr., was murdered during a drunken fight on Super Bowl Sunday, 1997. The fight was connected to his brother Joseph because it involved his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child. On January 26, 1997, Randall Saunders and his girlfriend Susan Broomer went to Tortilla Flat, a restaurant and bar in Danbury. They drank and watched the Super Bowl. They were getting ready to leave when Broomer approached Dominic Jr. and started talking to him. They got into an argument and she threw a drink in his face. According to court documents, Dominic Jr. told Saunders that he better contain his bitch. Saunders drew a gun, approached Dominic Jr., and put the barrel of the gun against his head or neck. They got into a physical fight, and restaurant staff called 911. You do need to be careful who you say those types of words to.
That's true. You never know.
Apparently, the fight ended when Saunders entered the kitchen area. He holstered his weapon. Dominic Jr. approached the kitchen doorway and shouted that he would kill Saunders if he ever pulled the gun on him again. He started walking towards Saunders. And that doesn't seem to me to be a very smart move.
No.
You already know that this guy has a gun.
And he's not afraid to pull it out.
Dennis Keeler, one of the restaurant owners, asked Dominic to stop, but he didn't. According to one witness, Saunders calmly pulled out his gun and shot at Dominic Jr. 5 times. Saunders was later convicted of manslaughter.
Well, that was definitely a Super Bowl party gone bad.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody had some Coca-Colas. A lot of bad decisions were made.
Oh, yeah.
One very deadly decision, and, man ended up dead. The Hartford Courant reported that a defense attorney tried to keep Joseph Badaracco out of court for fear that he would intimidate witnesses. The judge rejected the motion and would not allow anyone to ask Joseph questions about Mary Badaracco. In December 1999, the state police announced they reopened the investigation after new information surfaced. The reward was increased to $50,000. Now, the police wouldn't say what this information was, but they did say it could be the most significant development in several years. At the time, Dominic was 64 years old and still living in the home he once shared with Mary. He told the Hartford Courant, "I don't know nothing at all in regards to Mary's disappearance." The Danbury News-Times reported that between 1998 and 2000, there were 3 incidents where Dominic or his son Joseph allegedly threatened or assaulted other contractors and former employees. In December 1998, ex-employee Wendell Miller, who filed a workers' comp claim, told the police that Joseph attacked him with a sledgehammer and broke his arm. Joe said he hit Miller with his hand, which was supported by statements from his father and a friend who said Joe acted in self-defense after Miller stuck a shiny object, possibly a gun, out of the window of his truck. A prosecutor concluded that neither the victim nor the accused were credible.
That's pretty rough, man, when neither one can be credible.
It'd also be rough to have your arm broken by a sledgehammer.
Yeah, so don't you do those things I told you not to do, and I don't have to go get my sledgehammer.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how badly that would hurt.
Oh, the pain would be
excruciating.
Oh, my gosh.
In July 1999, 2 former employees claimed that Dominic threatened to kill them after he saw them talking to a current employee in a parking lot outside the company office. Dominic shouted at them, per the News-Times, When my son's trial is over, it's going to be a pool of blood and it's going to be yours. Okay, I can't help but feel that we are in a real mafia-like situation here.
It really sounds like it.
Dominic was not charged in this incident. In 2000, one of the former employees involved in the previous incident filed a complaint, but then said he made peace with Dominic and didn't want to pursue it further.
I bet he did make some peace when Dominic came knocking on the door.
And said, don't pursue this any further or something bad's going to happen to you. Now, we don't know that happened, but, everything is kind of pointing to this guy not really being a great dude, right? The abuse, all of these incidents involving current or former employees or subcontractors. Dominic's business partnership with Ronald Richter dissolved in 2007. That year, the company was ordered to pay a $231,000 judgment to a Hartford insurance company. The company alleged that they had been underpaying their premium by not listing subcontractors as employees on their workers' compensation policy. You can get away with a lot of criminal activity, but don't mess around on your taxes or with the insurance company.
I would say, or insurance,
They'll get you.
They want that money.
Just like they got Capone.
They did.
The IRS. In September 2007, the Connecticut State Police excavated the yard in Newtown. As part of the investigation into Mary's disappearance, the home once belonged to 65-year-old Ernest Dockenhausen, an excavation contractor who often worked for Dominic. Investigators received a tip that Ernest may have buried Mary's car, which had gone missing. At first, Ernest denied burying anything, but eventually admitted to burying 304 cars on his property. He said one of the cars was a blue Cavalier, the same model as Mary's car, which prompted the search.
It's a lot of cars.
304 cars buried on your property? Yeah. But, it is something that I was thinking about earlier, which is, Dominic being this contractor and having all of these different people working for him at his disposal, well, they're going to have a lot of equipment that might make it a little bit easier to get rid of someone than, let's say, the average person.
Yeah, because he's going to know a guy that knows a guy
who has the equipment to bury something deep or something like that. Investigators removed a few vehicles from the property, but none of them were a Chevy Cavalier. On April 25th, 2008, the Connecticut State Police arrested Ernest Dockenhausen and charged him with interference with the investigation. At a court hearing in November 2008, Mary's daughter, Beth Profeta, said that at one point, Dockenhausen admitted to burying Mary's car. His lawyer told the News-Times that there was evidence cars were buried on his former property, but none of them were Mary's. On May 7, 2009, a jury acquitted Ernest Dockenhausen of giving false, misleading, and incomplete information about cars he buried on his property. The defense presented testimony from a psychologist who called Ernest's memory unreliable.
Well, if you buried over 300 some cars, I don't know how you're going to remember all the cars you buried anyway. I mean, I can't remember a name of a movie sometimes. I know who's in it, but I can't remember the name of the movie.
Sometimes you don't even know who's in it. But here's the thing that kind of struck me with this Ernest guy's deal. What did he really do? At first, he said he didn't bury any cars, and then he admitted he did. And he said he may have buried a blue Chevy, but they looked and it wasn't there. I'm trying to figure out what this guy really did wrong other than initially saying he didn't bury any cars.
Yeah. Maybe they just felt maybe he slowed the investigation down by saying that.
And I'm sure he did. I'm sure they wasted resources and things like that. The prosecutor told the jury that when investigators told Dockenhausen they did not find a Chevy Cavalier buried on the property, he said, "If you ain't got it, I don't remember." The police theorized that Dominic asked him to bury Mary's car in 1988. At that time, Ernest was burying other cars and debris from a house fire. I'm still having a problem with 304 cars buried on your property. Isn't there an easier way to get rid of cars? Crush them, sell them for scrap?
It makes you wonder why he was just burying them, but what do you think the neighbors are thinking? There he goes again, honey. He's burying another one.
I mean, I understand people have junkyards, they have cars sitting around, but why are you burying them on your property? That's throwing me a little bit.
Love to be the new buyer of the place, digging out for a pool. Damn it, we hit another car.
There's 300 cars down here.
Got to find another spot.
At trial, a state investigator named Dominic as a suspect in Mary's disappearance for the first time. That's a big deal.
It is.
Major Crime Squad Detective Joseph Bukowski testified per the News Times, "My main suspect at this time is Dominic Badaracco Sr., who is the last person to see the victim alive, had a history of extramarital affairs and domestic violence."
True.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to think that from the very beginning, Dominic wasn't at the top of their list. Now, I don't know what they had on him, obviously not enough to charge him, but it does sound like it took many, many years for them to come out and say that, he was kind of the main suspect. On February 8, 2012, the state police reopened Mary's case and searched Dominic's property in Sherman. A source told the News Times that the search was for Mary's body. In April 2012, a grand jury completed an 18-month investigation of Mary's case, but there were no arrests and the proceedings were sealed. Joseph was subpoenaed by the grand jury but didn't testify. Per the Hartford Courant, his lawyer said he has no knowledge of what happened to Mary and was never a member of the Hells Angels. Dominic also did not testify before the grand jury. On April 18, 2012, 76-year-old Dominic Badaracco was arrested and charged with offering an illegal gift and bribery. He was accused of offering a judge $100,000 to try to influence the grand jury investigation. The case involved Dominic's former business partner, Ronald Richter, and Superior Court Judge Robert Brunetti. Brunetti was friends with Ronald Richter, but considered Dominic an acquaintance. They used to play golf together, and Brunetti's business partner represented Dominic in legal matters regarding Richter and Badaracco Siding Company.
Love all this shadiness going on.
Well, and I think that's the point here, right? Does it prove that Dominic had something to do with Mary's disappearance? No, it doesn't. Does it prove that he was a shady character? I think that's pretty safe to say.
Well, when you're going to pay a judge off $100,000, it's kind of shady.
Shady and quite illegal, I believe. In late September 2010, Richter called Brunetti and wanted to know what the judge knew about the grand jury investigation. Brunetti didn't know anything because he was not involved in the proceedings. In October, the two exchanged more calls. Brunetti told the police that he spoke to colleagues in the New Britain Judicial District and learned who was conducting the grand jury investigation. He told Richter about the existence of the investigation. On November 17, 2010, Dominic spoke to the judge using Richter's phone. According to the News Times, Dominic said, "Bobby, I need your help. They've all been subpoenaed for Friday." Judge Brunetti said there was nothing he could do. Dominic responded, "I'm only going to say this one time. It's worth 100 G's. Brunetti ended the call at that point. And the following day, he contacted inspectors with the chief state attorney's office to report the bribe. Brunetti called Richter on December 2nd, 2010. The conversation was recorded by the police. During the phone call, Richter gave the phone to Dominic. According to the Hartford Courant, the judge said, "There may be something I can do for you. I wasn't sure I could, but there may be something I can do to help you out." Dominic only said okay. The judge suggested they meet in person without Richter knowing. However, the next morning, Richter informed Brunetti that Dominic couldn't make it to the meeting. Investigators learned that Dominic withdrew over $100,000 from retirement accounts 2 days before he offered the bribe. Well, that doesn't look good.
Not good at all.
Looks like there's some intent there to follow through.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to pull that type of money out?
Like it's more than just words, right? More than just talking. In a 2013 interview with the News Times, Richter said he didn't know Dominic personally, adding, "All we did was work. He liked to hunt and fish. I like to golf and have a few cocktails, which I thought was a little strange. These guys own a company together, but they don't know each other personally.
Yeah, I don't buy that.
It's almost hard to do that. Richter claimed he had no knowledge of Mary's disappearance. He said he was working on a house next door to a state police investigator and was not questioned about the case for more than 2 decades. Before trial, Dominic's defense asked the judge to exclude any evidence about Mary's disappearance, but prosecutors argued the information was crucial to prove Dominic's motive. The trial started on June 24, 2013. Judge Brunetti testified that he confirmed the existence of the grand jury investigation to Richter, but refused to accept the bribe. After Badaracco offered the bribe, he went to work and read the state statute on bribery. He then called a lawyer who told him to sit on the information until the morning, which is when he made the report. He acknowledged that disclosing the existence of the grand jury investigation could be a violation of the Judicial Code of Conduct, but he insisted that he did not seek out information about the grand jury. He was at lunch with a judge from the same district and saw a judge from a different district in the restaurant. When he asked the judge what he was doing there, he said he was there for a grand jury. Ronald Richter testified that he was granted immunity from prosecution. He said Dominic told him he was going to give something to the judge, but he didn't know what it was. The defense argued that Dominic's transfer of $185,000 from his retirement accounts to his checking account was for bond and hiring a lawyer should he be arrested.
Okay, if you want to believe that.
Well, it's a pretty good argument.
It is.
I mean, you have to make some type of argument as to why someone would withdraw that amount of money.
I mean, he's making a case for it.
Dominic's wife, Joan, testified that she withdrew $185,000 from their retirement accounts because she believed Dominic was going to be arrested and she wanted to be able to post his bond. When she learned about the grand jury proceedings in October 2010, she got their house appraised and contacted a bail bondsman. So she's kind of backing that up. Prosecutors noted that Dominic had access to more than $900,000. The jury was allowed to weigh Mary's disappearance as a motive for bribery. On June 28, 2013, Dominic Badaracco was found guilty of bribery. On September 13th, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. His lawyer asked for probation due to his advanced age, but the judge ruled that it was important to impose prison time to deter others from offering bribes to judges.
Don't mess with the judges.
Well, that is a huge deal. You know, we already have issues with our judicial system as it is. But when you're talking about someone with the kind of money to offer a judge enough of it to influence a grand jury, the outcome of a trial, the way a trial, what's included, what's excluded.
Yeah.
You can't have that. Beth Profeta, Mary's daughter, said she hoped prison would become leverage to get Badaracco to talk. As quoted by the Hartford Courant, she said, "If he tells us where my mother is, maybe we can work something out." That's floating around in my head.
If he had something to do with it, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to talk about it, especially at this point.
Well, the thought I have, where is it in his interest? And I don't see that it is. It would be a different story maybe if he was, sentenced to life with no parole for Mary's disappearance. Well, maybe then you offer that up to her daughters. Hey, I'm going to tell you where she is. But he's in there on a bribery charge. It's 7 years.
Yeah.
Why in the world would he confess to anything regarding Mary's disappearance if he was involved? It benefits him in no way.
No. And I think he's just from that old school too, right? That don't kiss and tell.
Or don't rat on yourself or rat on anyone else.
Yep.
The Judicial Investigations Board chose not to discipline retired Judge Brunetti in January 2014. Dominic's conviction was upheld in April 2015, but he was granted early release on April 8th, 2016. He was 79 years old. He was released to a halfway house in July and expected to go home in October. He would remain on parole in 2020. The state police were vague about the status of the murder investigation after Dominic was released, but they maintain that the investigation is active. It's a little hard to figure out if he is still alive, but if he is, he would be in his late 80s. I'm thinking he probably is still alive. Couldn't find any obituary or anything like that, find a grave, anything. But it's been almost 40 years since Mary Badaracco disappeared. And this is something that we run into in these older cases. Potential witnesses age, which never helps the investigation. It only hurts it. There's currently a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Mary's disappearance and or homicide. If you have any information about the disappearance of Mary Badaracco, you can call the Connecticut State Police Western District Major Crime Squad at Troop A in Southbury. Their number is 1-800-376-1554. So as we wrap this one up, Gibbs, obviously we spent a lot of time talking about Dominic Badaracco, but for good reason. There's no way that he's not going to be a person of interest.
Yeah.
There was domestic violence in the relationship. His girlfriend moves in 2 weeks after Mary's disappearance. Her car is left. He smashed in the windshield of that car.
And don't forget, he got rid of all her stuff really fast.
Yeah, and just everything that he did makes him look bad.
Yeah.
To have another woman move in within 2 weeks, that obviously means that relationship was ongoing.
Oh, for sure.
Prior to Mary's disappearance. And to me, the finality of getting rid of all of Mary's things, as if there's no way she could possibly return. There's not going to be any chance at reconciliation. That screams to me that there's no way she's coming back.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for me is motive. Who would have a motive to want to kill Mary Badaracco?
Well, if you don't want to share your hidden money and your known money with anybody, that would be a motive.
I think that's a motive. You want out of the relationship. You want to keep all your money. You obviously want to be with this other woman. They later got married. The communication about Mary's disappearance to her daughters, that was strange, very strange to me. All of it, all of his actions just don't seem right. Now, does that mean he did it? No, it doesn't. Some people just act strangely. They do, odd things in moments where you wouldn't expect them to do them. But we know that the husband is looked at first anyway. He's going to be a person of interest, even if you didn't do all these strange things.
Yeah.
But you add all of this on top of it, and this kind of quasi, what seemed to be almost like a mafia type connection. It just doesn't make him look good at all.
Nope, it does not.
But at the end of the day, you can't say for sure that he had anything to do. But there's been no mention of anyone else, right, that would have had a motive to want to hurt her.
Nope.
So for the family's sake, for, her girl's sake and grandchildren and maybe even great-grandchildren at this point, I don't know, you would love for them to have answers. Because as we've heard time and time again, it's the not knowing for many of these families that is the hardest.
It's the torture.
It's very hard to lose a loved one, but then to lose one and have no idea what happened to them and who did it. I think torture is a good word.
Yeah.
I think it eats at people, and it's just something that haunts them day in and day out.
Well, maybe if the killer's still alive and on their deathbed, they'll give a confession.
Well, if it turns out to be Dominic Badaracco, I don't see any other reason why he would. Again, there is nothing in it for him. If he had a hand in this, to say anything about it. And to be honest with you, there's really no reason to say anything on your deathbed.
No, besides just doing the right thing.
The problem is, as I see it, these type of people, if he was capable of this, he's not really interested in doing the right thing. I don't think most of them are.
No, you're right. But, maybe he's on his deathbed and he's thinking about the afterlife, whatever he believes or doesn't believe, right? But maybe he'll be thinking, you know what? I could probably use all the help I can right now. So maybe I'll do a little deathbed confession on a few things here and see if that helps me out to get me into a little better spot in the afterlife.
Yeah, that would probably be, one of the only ways that it would happen. The other thing might be if he passes, then maybe there is somebody that still knows something about it.
Yeah.
That is then willing to come forward and doesn't fear retribution, but who knows?
Yeah.
It's a sad case. It's just, we don't have them all that often where everything seems to be pointing to one person. Right? So a lot of times we're talking about a number of people, possible motives. We've talked about one person who happened to be the husband, and he had opportunity, means, motive, all of those things.
Yeah.
You just have no idea if he really had something to do with it.
Well, hopefully one day the girls will get some closure.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's it for our episode on Mary Badaracco. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey there, Mike. This is Tim Walker. I just want to let you know I really love all of the podcasts that you are involved in. I appreciate all the work you've done. It's fantastic. It's amazing. I just got done listening to Criminology, what episode? The Bodies in Lake Mead. You and Morph were talking about the river between Canada and Detroit. I was actually just there recently on a fishing trip with my brothers and my father and a couple of my uncles and stuff. And, we were sitting out there and we actually were seriously thinking how many bodies are in this river? And that's it was a 45-minute discussion we had just sitting there this could be countless bodies in this river. And Jimmy Hoffa was actually one we mentioned. So, I just want to say thanks for all the work you've done. Have a great time making these podcasts. Bye.
Oh, thank you for the voicemail and the kudos. Appreciate that. I think it was last week, Gibbs, we were talking about them dredging a river and they were finding a bunch of cars.
Right.
And we've had that come up in other episodes as well. So, if people are dumping that many cars in rivers, especially, the big rivers, I think we'd probably be astonished if we knew how many bodies were actually in there.
Yeah, I think people would be really shocked.
It's a little tougher to find a body than it is a car.
It is. And it's going to make that whole weekend recreation fun on the river kind of takes away from that. When you think about there could be bodies underneath you.
Well, especially the catfish you're eating out of there too.
Well, that's right. They love the stuff on the bottom.
They do.
Hi, guys. This is Tommy in North Carolina. I thoroughly enjoyed your Unsolved episode about Bobby Fuller. One of the things I wanted to point out that you may not know is back in the 60s, early 60s to the mid 60s, artists did not travel alone. They normally traveled as a package, which meant there would be maybe up to 5, 6 bands on a tour at the same time. They'd all share a bus, and they share about 3%. I think maybe the first time I had even heard of anybody from the 60s touring alone with a supporting act would be the Monkees, who had some guy named Jimi Hendrix opening up for them on one of their first tours. He actually played here in Greensboro. There's a picture of him at the hotel with some of the Monkees, and in Charlotte as well. So anyway, just wanted to make that a point. Touring like we know it these days did not exist back then. Touring back then usually involved a package tour, and sometimes they were Dick Clark package tours. So there's your Dick Clark again. Anyway, enjoying the show. Keep your own time ticking. Have a great week.
Hey, we're the monkeys. Did you watch that when you were a kid?
I did.
I did too, man.
Yeah.
I was into it.
Yeah, I know you were into. You still have the one poster.
I do. It's still on the wall.
What's his name?
Davey.
Yeah, Davy Jones.
So thanks for the call, because we love that, and it is something that I knew. I didn't think about talking about it when we were doing the episode, but my thought is they just weren't making the money. You know, artists today make so much money. They got their own bus, they got their own plane or whatever. But back then they weren't making the money. So they had to kind of group together and share that. But
share a hotel room and all that stuff,
buses and all that good stuff. But we appreciate those types of voicemails giving us information. I love it.
You know, we need to do a podcast tour, a bunch of podcast people. Let's just throw us all in a van and go city to city. I can tell you don't even like right there. It's too close for comfort.
You lost me with a bunch of people in a van.
Yeah.
Now the podcast tour would be awesome.
Yes.
Can you and I just drive ourselves and meet up with other people? Do I have to be in a van with 10 or 15 other sweaty people?
I was just trying to save costs.
Because I would really rather not be.
I was just trying to save costs, man.
No matter how much I like them. That's not the issue.
No.
The issue is overcrowding. Plus, I have to drive.
That's true. You're a control freak.
I am. I do not like to ride with other people.
Wonder how long it would take before somebody would actually become the story of a podcast and something like that.
Maybe not long if we got on each other's nerves.
Yeah.
All right. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
See what's screaming all month long during Pluto TV's April Ghouls. Watch hauntingly good movies like Evil Dead, 30 Days of Night, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Or holy water hits like The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands of movies and TV shows available on live and on demand. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now.